Derek Loudermilk, and I'm going to be doing a series of talks about training, nutrition, what clothes to wear for various adverse weather conditions, race tactics over the next few weeks. They're all going to be very short, and then I'll open them up to questions. So this one is going to be about planning a racing season. And if you have all the time in the world, then you can just ride as much as you want and rest as much as you want like a pro. It's totally easy. But when you're a student, like we all are, you have to be pretty conscientious about planning your workouts and your season so you get the most out of it. And just as an example, last year I was able to do all my racing on 6 hours of training a week. When I was racing full time, I was more like 20 to 25 hours a week. So, big difference. The difference was that I was trying to do more quality than total time on the bike. So, a few things to consider when you're planning a race season are to have some goals, such as you want to do well at the MSU race or conference, or maybe you want to do well all season. Training consistently is probably what you want to target, and training moderately, so don't have big, huge rides and then take the whole rest of the week off. You want to be training more or less, 6 days a week, 5 days a week if you can. And that will help you commit to the goals that you have set. So, when you set your goals, you want to plan your most important race and try to peak for that. So for a lot of you, that will be conference. And what that means is that you make a training plan, and the training plan usually consists of blocks and cycles of training. So we have 3 months until conferences, so that's effectively 3 large cycles of training. Let me just draw a nice little graph. Here you have first month ending, so this is February, March, and April. And throughout a cycle, you're going to be gradually increasing the difficulty and the volume of the work you're doing. So, say this is training volume and intensity. You're going to slowly ramp it up over the first 3 weeks and then take a rest. And then in March, you're going to ramp it up some more and take a rest. And in April, you're going to ramp it up even more and rest for your maximum fitness. And you can see how this is kind of going up because this is also fitness. You want fitness to go up over time. So that's kind of like the big picture. You've also got the weekly picture. So
it goes good with the speech. It goes good.
You also want to cycle during the week, in which maybe Monday is a rest day. You're working harder on Tuesday, resting on Wednesday, working harder on Thursday, resting on Friday, and you've got a big weekend. So you allow yourself in both of these recovery time, because that is the only way that you will improve. Resting allows your body to compensate for the training you've done, thus making you more fit. So this is something that I always remind people. Resting is the most important workout you can do, because it locks in the gains you get from training. So the two biggest predictors for cycling, I'll leave that up for a second, are for success in a bike race are power at threshold, which is essentially your ability to ride as hard as you can for an hour. That's one indicator. And the other is body fat percentage. I won't talk about body fat percentage today, but I will include a little bit of that when we talk about diet. But training your threshold power also improves, how fast you can go for a minute, 5 minutes, 3 hours. And the way you train is with a variety of different intensities. So we can break down intensities into 6 zones of intensity, and these can be measured. You can measure them with your own perception. How hard does it feel? You can measure them with a heart rate monitor or a power meter. So whatever you're using, this is generally recovery pace. This is your aerobic base. This is where you're going to spend a lot of February. Ideally, you're going to be doing long rides with a lot of aerobic base and tempo level activities. Tempo is where it just starts to get hard to have a conversation, where you're starting to get out of breath. This is all aerobic stuff. This is so this is that good 1 hour time trial level as far as you can go for an hour. We don't usually train that much because it also makes us really tired. So we do more of our training in the aerobic areas. In February, you're going to be wanting to focus a lot of your training in the zone 2 and 3. Once we move to March, we're in this second cycle where stuff is starting to get more intense, and also we're starting to race. But then you introduce intervals into your training, your midweek training, for example, when you're not racing, where you're doing 15 to 45 minutes of sort of hard riding, and then maybe 10 to 20 minutes of the sub-threshold. And then that's when you start seeing big gains, because they enhance this. You're kind of pushing the threshold up from underneath, even from an easier effort. Finally, in April, you're going to want to be doing more power, short, harder efforts, like 3 to 5 minutes, as hard as you can, sort of. And that means you're going to be encompassing this range, which is up to the anaerobic point and sprinting. So you're going easier in intensity, but higher in volume. So this is when, let's say we're talking about a Cat 3 or Cat 4. Those riders are probably going to want to shoot for 400 to 500 hours, like over the season, over a year, which means in February, you're probably looking at 10 to 14 hours a week. In March, you're going to scale that down to 9 to 12, and then you're looking at 8 to 10 in April, but the intensity is going up. So more hours, easier stuff, building your aerobic engine in February. March is when you start to do your tempo and harder, steady riding. April is where you're sharpening up your speed and power skills. Okay, I'll just wrap all that up with 3 most important things that you can do to enhance all of this, which is, number 1, keep a training log. Write what you have ridden, where you went, who you went with, how hard it was, how long it was, all that stuff. But also what your diet was for that day, and maybe how it made you feel on the ride, how much sleep you're getting, how fatigued you are overall. And there's a saying that what gets recorded gets improved. This is, or what gets measured gets managed in business. This is exactly the same. As soon as you start recording what you're doing, you have this personal investment in it, and it will keep you consistent, and you'll see a lot of gains, and it's much easier to observe like how your workouts are going for you. So plan your workouts for the week and the month in advance, so you have an idea and you can schedule around the other big events in your life and the homeworks and the tests and traveling abroad and all that stuff. That will let you be consistent. Finally, again, resting is the most important. Best workout is laying on the couch. So eat well, rest well in between your workouts, enjoy life, and just make sure you get those few key days so you're in peak physical and mental preparedness to do your hard workouts, and then rest the rest of the time. Thanks, and I will take any questions if you have specific ones. Yeah?
So if you have a really big week and you say recovery is pretty important, is it kind of a wash if you're going to get less sleep to get a workout in? Or I guess, is it better to prioritize sleep or prioritize your time for the week if it comes to that?
I'm a big fan of prioritizing sleep. If you can get 6 hours a night and better, you will do much better for recovering and also for learning, like for studying and stuff. If you know you're going to be up all night studying, that's, you're not going to be able to recover as well. So maybe if you've got a hard workout and you had one rest day planned afterwards, maybe add a second one. Then you can do your hard workout and you'll have time to recover before the next time you do something hard, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year when you were saying that you did like 6 hours a week or whatever compared to 25 when you were racing, full time.
Yeah.
How did you, what did you focus on for those? Did you do more like tempo, anaerobic stuff, or?
I was doing, except for my warm-ups, I was doing exclusively power-based training where I was hitting very specific ranges of power. In February and March, I was doing a lot of tempo, and in April I was doing a lot of really hard riding, maybe 200% of my threshold power, so pretty hard riding. That's not sustainable. You can only do that for 12 weeks before you start to really lose fitness. So I had to take a big rest afterwards.
Did that work out well for you doing the 6 hours? I mean, obviously it probably worked out better for the rest of your life, but I mean, training-wise, did you have good results with that?
In a longer road race, you just can't be strong for the whole thing. If you're racing more than 3 hours and you're only training 6 hours a week, you won't have it for the end. But for crits and races under 2 hours, no problem. You're just as fit as anyone else. Yeah.
So you mentioned that if you're training really threshold and a lot of power, then your fitness level starts to decrease. Or what was, I understand that, or would you go about then backing off that after a while and then going?
The harder you get more towards the zone 6, the harder efforts are going to tear your body down more, which means you need to have more recovery. You can't do 2 hours of anaerobic stuff. You can only maybe do 20 to 40 minutes in a day. But tempo, you can, once you're fit, you can ride tempo for hours. So you just need to keep in mind when you're doing these harder efforts, maybe you're only doing 3 workouts a week instead of 4, that sort of thing. Building in adequate rest and balancing. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
I've kind of noticed that it does kind of follow, like in a bigger picture, like a 12-week kind of cycle to get to the next size of cycle. And in my training, I've been able to have a pretty successful 12-week training plan that I've actually stuck